Bill 253.
Bill 253 initiates an amendment to Article 3, Section 3-6 of the Hawaii County Charter 2012 edition relating to the term of appointment for the county clerk. Establishes a 6-year term for the county clerk. Reference Communication 876, introduced by Mr. Yoshimoto.
Mr. Yoshimoto?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move to approve Bill 253.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Yoshimoto and seconded by Councilmember Kern. Councilmember Yoshimoto?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, council members, members of the public, just to give you some history behind the rationale for this bill. Ever since I've been on, we've had clerks change each term. Basically, every 2 years there's a new clerk. And some of the things that come with that change are like most things in life, good and bad. It kind of depends what your perspective is, what is good and what is bad. But the rationale behind this is to provide some stability to the position. The language here, my intent is to mirror the language for the legislative auditor, which is a 6-year term. Similar removal is by a 2/3 vote for cause. For cause basically means you have to have a very good reason for removal, not just political or disagreements as far as what the clerk wants to do or doesn't want to do. So the purpose is, again, to provide the clerk with some stability, some independence to carry out the functions of the office. For the public's information, according to our charter, the clerk is the clerk of the council. He or she is the custodian of the county seal. The clerk shall conduct all elections held within the county, appoint a deputy clerk, perform other functions as the council may prescribe, and necessary staff subject to civil service laws and classifications. So, one of the things we look at in life is how we want to leave things, and this is my last term, and I've enjoyed the experience here. And one of the things I want to make better is some stability in the office. So this is something I think that is worth discussing with my colleagues. As far as the effective date, if approved by the council and the voters, this would be effective the 2014-2016 term, which means that you, incoming council, would have the responsibility of appointing the clerk for a 6-year term. So that's the mechanics of that. I'm open to any questions or concerns from the council. Thank you.
Okay, and I apologize, I didn't see which lights went on first, but I'm going to call on Councilmember Kern.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, looking at this, I like that it's simple, I like that it's straightforward. I think it takes it out of, it makes it a lot less political. Nonetheless, there's going to be some potential politics in that because the council will appoint them every 6 years. I like the fact that there's stability in the office. Because, this is the first time being in here, we get a chance to see what that job and what that position is really about. Prior to that, it was, you hear about the news, you come to meetings, kind of see what they do, but they have a serious job, and they're like the backbone of the entire office and everything functioning and moving around. So I think having somebody in there that would have that stability of being there for 6 years, having that investment in there, makes a lot of sense to me, and hopefully we'll be able to attract good folks like Mr. Vienna. It's a pleasure working with. So I like this, and I think it's great to put it out to the vote of the people. I think this is also something very simple and easy when it comes time to vote. Certain charter amendments tend to get complicated and it's tricky. This one, I think, is straightforward. You want this position to be for 6 years, and you want it to go from basically term to term. So I like it. I'm going to support it, and ultimately it's up to them.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Iligan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also feel the same way as Councilmember Yoshimoto and Councilmember Kern on the fact of stability. And one of the things I wanted to point out that wasn't mentioned was that the council, by a 2/3 vote of its membership, may remove the county clerk from the office at the time of cause. So there's a provision in there stating that if the county clerk is not what the council at that time felt or that person doing his responsibility correctly, then they are able to move it with a majority. So it has that there. But this will, and as I'm just gonna two previous council members said, and that's the main reason why I would really support this charter amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Onishi?
Chair, would you be able to let me ask Mr. Yoshimoto a couple questions?
Sure,
Okay.
if he's willing to answer.
Mr. Yoshimoto, my first question would be, so where did you guys get this idea from? Were you folks looking at like Oahu's, their clerk is, because their clerk is, I think, is 6 years too, correct?
I had heard that Oahu's clerk who serves for a term of 6 years, so yeah, that's part of it. I mean, it's just something that's been talked about from time to time.
And is the other councils like Maui and Kauai, what is their clerk's term?
Oh, I didn't research that.
Okay, you know, because I look at this, which sounds great, but then to me, why Oahu, they go to 6 years, because their terms are 4-year terms. Okay, and so for us, we're like every 2 years. So to me, if anything, we should limit it to like maybe 4 years instead of 6 years. Okay, but in Oahu's case, they go every 4 years, but then they also alternate. Like there's like maybe 5 of them that gonna run this term, and the other 4 are like their lapse over, and then so they go the next 2 years from now. So there's always veteran council members that are on the council at the same time, whereas for us, you could get all freshmen one time. So you would want maybe a clerk in there for at least another 2 years to help guide them, right? But then to go 6, I think that would be a little bit too long. And also through discussions, I'm sorry, and then I guess that would be my question to you. Okay, and then the other second question would be, no, that was the first question that you answered about Oahu. Okay. My second question would be, have you ever thought about having like an office manager?
Office manager to...
Like a permanent position that's an office manager that oversees both the clerk services and, I'm not the clerk, but the council services and the committee services, but then would be under the clerk.
You mean like a civil service position?
Yes, correct.
Oh, no, I haven't thought about it, but if that provides additional stability, I think that would help. Although, I also think that because the buck stops with the clerk in terms of the office functions, you know, that's where you're going to get your decisions being made.
Okay, and so that's it. But because what I thought about the clerk, having an office manager is because every time the clerk's going to change over, then you can have different philosophies. So if you have an office manager, basically the functions, once they have everything correctly done, then the operations can be always consistent year after year after year. But then if you do like a 4 or a 6 year term, depending on the clerk's philosophy, things could change again. So that's another thing that we got to look at for the future councils, is that how do we want to make this stable? Right? Do we want to have it where every 4 years or 6 years things could change? Or we could have something where it's permanent, where we have an office manager who's civil service position, could be there for a longer period of time. And that way we would know like 10, 20 years down the road, the way the function of the 2 sections work would be more consistent. And so I think, you know, this could be more thought of, and then like, or with more discussions on seeing how this could be tweaked. But for, like I said earlier, I think Oahu, why they went the 6 years is because of their terms, their term limits, and also about the years of service or the term service. But then also, like I said, they alternate, right? So that's why, to me, I think they did it that way, where at least that they would have that stable with this clerk being there. But just something to think about. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Willie, and then Councilmember Willie.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with Council Member Onishi, just that I think this is a starting point, and I think it would be good to give it more deliberation. A couple questions or concerns I have. One is just sort of, to be aware that how is this clerk selected? Right now, it's by the council chair. So, is that correct? And then the majority, okay, the council chair, proposes proposes for us to decide, versus say with the auditor, which is also 6 years, in that case, we advertise and put it out, and we have applicants, and then we make a decision as a whole on that level. So it's a more public or transparent process. So where there is someone coming in for 6 years, one of my questions is, would we want to stay with the same, where the chair basically suggests someone, which is how it happened this past year. I don't know exactly how it's written up. And then here's who we want, and then it was pretty much then we approve that or disapprove what was suggested by the chair. So I think that's one thing to just take into consideration and think about. Would we want to change the selection process or not? And then second is really also in terms of lines of authority. Currently, as I understand it, it's the council as a whole to the chair, and the clerk is under the chair. So that, say, in a case such as I've had, where I go to the clerk and say, here is this certain rule, and you should be following it, and it doesn't appear that there's a disagreement between what the chair says, how it's interpreted, and the clerk. In my discussion with the clerk, it really comes down to, well, the final decision is made by the chair, because the clerk is immediately under the chair. So, okay, I'm seeing some smiles, and perhaps I'm not being clear, but I just think it's important to be aware of what the whole structure, where the authority is, where that clerk is, and basically I see it as, it does give the chair more power if they're the ones selecting it, and I think we need to be aware of what power the clerk has relative to the chair. So I'm just trying to throw out things that I think are really all part of this decision, and it's not just 4 to 6 years or 2 years. And I think that the points that Councilmember Onishi brought up as well in terms of what that period of time should be. So I yield. I mean,
Thank you.
Madam Chair, point of
Sure.
order, real quick, sorry to interrupt. So just to be clear, this is just about appointing for 6 years. It's not about clerk duties, chairman duties. We don't want to get off track.
Thank
I
you.
know Ms. Ford's not going to get off track.
Thank-
Of course she is.
So, anyway.
Thank you for that reminder. Okay, Councilmember Ford?
Thank you, and I'll immediately go off track. I have to agree with a portion of what Ms. Willie said and a portion of what Mr. Onishi said, and I'll tell you why. These items 1 through 6, B1 through 6, these are the duties. These are not qualifications. That's the difference. When I wrote the independent legislative auditor, I had job qualifications. If you go to work as the director of public works, you've got to be a licensed engineer. If you're going to be in environmental management, you're supposed to be a licensed engineer. You know, all of these things are requirements so that somebody has a basic set of qualifications. And let me give you an example. In the State Office of Elections, they don't have union people. They have civil service, but not union. And before anyone gets all excited, I'm pro-union. I'm ex-union, so I'm pro-union. But there are other things that may impact this. If you truly want an apolitical county clerk, then you've got to have a selection process. It's got to be a discussion, and you've got to have job qualifications, none of which are listed here. For instance, if I were going to choose, I did my research, as you know, went to the national website for the National Association of County Recorders, Election Officials, and Clerks. And one of the things that they recommend is that there's a training program for something called a certified public official. And 96 units of education. For me, I would like a county clerk, and this is no reflection on Mr. Maeda or any previous clerk that we've ever had. It has nothing to do with that. But if we're going to give them a 6-year term, then I want them to have qualifications other than a political appointee. I want to know that they've operated and supervised elections for at least 2 or 3 election cycles, whatever that might be, whether it's 2-year, 4-year, makes no difference. It's still an election cycle. Not because they're going to run as the supervisor of the Office of Election, but because they have to understand elections. I would want them to have managerial experience of several years. I would want them to have supervisory experience. We all know the issues that we're dealing with. I'm not going to go into those issues. But those are the type of qualifications I would want for a position of this magnitude. And if you want to make them independent, they got to have an education, they got to have some, I'm not saying a degree, but they've got to have management experience, they've got to understand elections thoroughly and not just, hey, we all go to a voting booth and we vote. They've got to understand how to run an election, because there's all kinds of issues with an election, as we all know from the last one, that come up, whether we like it or not. So these duties are fine, but there's no qualifications for such an important position of a 6-year term. With a 2-year term, if it's a political appointee, and we all voted for this. We all voted for Mr. Maeda, and we all voted for the last few people. So if we're going to make them apolitical, that means they got to have independence. They should not be reporting to the chairperson. They should be reporting to the council as a whole. Ms. Woolley's absolutely correct in that. You can't have a chairperson saying, no, you're going to do it my way, rather than the council's way, or the right way, or something else. No offense to any chairperson, because we've all had recommendations from the chair and have selected those people. So I look at this and I say, simple isn't always the best way to do this. Without some kind of qualifications, and I'm not talking about the administrative manual stuff, because those are duties again. Without qualifications and a selection by the council and a job search for somebody who has those qualifications, I couldn't support this. And I'd like to, because I understand the continuity issue. It's a big issue. But this is going to turn into now a very, very important position that is going to have some independence. Not a lot maybe, but some independence, and there's a whole bunch of issues that haven't been dealt with. So I'm wishy-washy on this one at this point, and I would like to see some major amendments here. Thank you.
Councilmember Ia?
I'm just going to say, I think this is a good idea, because there's such a big learning curve coming into this organization, and for the clerk to get up to speed takes many months. So having the continuity is going to be a big advantage to the stability of the office. I was kind of just looking at the legislative auditor when we put that charter amendment into effect. It also establishes a 6-year term, and it's appointed by the council. There's just one paragraph that deals with some of the requirements. It doesn't really go into great detail about, and I think maybe if Mr. Yoshimoto was willing to consider just stating some of the, a little bit more detail, it might help the voters as well as us to support this. But I would support it as written as well, because I think those are the kind of things that if the council's going to go through the process of selection, that we would take under consideration. So I'm really not sure how much detail we do need here, but that's something that we could continue to discuss. But otherwise, I really support the idea. I think we've seen, we've gone through many clerks just in the time I've watched the council and worked with the clerks, and although there's been many good people appointed to that position, the time that we lose with each new clerk is very, I think, detrimental to the function of the organization. So I think this would help us.
May I make a point of order, Madam Chair?
Yes.
The only point of order I want to make is this is so important. I would like to have the chairperson each round be able to talk, not just at the end. That's just my personal opinion.
You know me, I would love to talk. So, are we okay with that? So, I'll let, Councilmember Elegant, you didn't go on the first round yet, did you?
I did.
You did. So can I just go on the first, because I don't want to, I keep writing my notes. Because I agree that we need stability. I also agree that continuity brings stability. I agree too that qualifications are important, but it's also important for the people who are making the choices, because if we, as council members, had qualifications to come into, you know, we need, I look at things in HR as being fair. So if I'm looking at a position that needs qualifications and it needs to go out to the people's vote, I think that as council members, we should have qualifications also, because we're taking on a very important position for our county. And, you know, just, you know, like it was talked about with the clerk coming off the street and just picking anyone. So I want to look at things fairly. I cannot just say that I would support just making sure the county clerk has qualifications. If I do support that, I want to support or put something in where I think council members should have qualifications as well. So that's where I'm talking about fairness. So that's why I'm saying that in this case, I'm not looking at qualifications, but I'm looking at we're selecting a chair, so we put our trust in that chair. That's our choice. Like the people put a trust in us as council members, so we get to do that. So if I wanna, I know I had some chuckle on the qualifications, but all I'm saying is when I look at fairness in any job, if we're saying a political appointed position should be maybe a certified public official and have some qualifications, I'm saying that it needs to go all around for our appointed positions. But anyways, this is just my feeling on fairness on positions, if I'm looking at it that way. So I do support what Councilmember Onishi is saying, is that maybe a 4-year versus a 6-year because of a transition type of period. You know, so I agree with that and what the council members on Oahu are doing. They're looking at transition and not letting people come in and be, you know, come into it cold and not, and the people who struggle is our regular, the people that are here for many years. They have to go through so many changes and different philosophies. And I'd like to see HR be more involved, our HR office be more involved, because the philosophy doesn't change in HR. So I'd like to see them more involved in that type of position. But I'm just kind of thinking, grabbing things from what I'm hearing, and so I can somehow come to a vote to it. But now we're going into second round. So, Council Member Kanuha, you didn't have a first round. I spoke over you. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's all right. I wanted you to talk on your first round as well. I'm pretty supportive of this measure, you know, but you know, I think back, I don't know how many councils in the past have had the ability to appoint their own clerk, and you know, now we're seeing, you know, it's going to be for a six-year term. You know, it almost takes away from the actual powers of the chair to appoint and the council to appoint their clerk every 2 years. You know, I'm okay with having stability for the council and stability for our staff in the back, and that's fine. If we're going to move in that direction, that's fine. But just, I mean, I haven't looked at the charter yet, but you know, in our legislative body, our chair is the presiding officer. You know, they're the ones that are presiding over all aspects of the legislative process, and I think that's important to note that you know, everybody is kind of, you know, it is the council as a whole, but the chair is the presiding officer over the legislative body, and that's important to note that, you know, everybody else underneath is going to be underneath I forget how the whole thing is written, but will be underneath the chair and the council. So that's something to note too. But whether you need qualifications, you know, it'll be up to us to decide whether that person is qualified or not. We can all say, you know, if that person comes to, is here as appointed, we have that ability to say, you know, that person's not qualified or that person is qualified. It's up to us. And if that person, yeah, we obviously want somebody qualified who can run elections. That's really important. We don't want something that could be screwed up in that sense. But you know, if that person is unqualified during that whole season, as in the 2 years, you know, it'll be up to us. It'll be our fault that we appointed somebody irresponsible. You know, that'll be our responsibility. We have to take it upon ourselves to say that that person is not qualified, and it's something I'm trying to take into account here. So, but I do support how it is written. You know, if you want that stability, I'm fine with that. Just trying to see how everybody else is going with this, but if you want to put in qualifications, I don't know. I might have an issue with that. But I do like the 4-year one. 6 years, okay. I just want to see what everybody else has to say on the second round too.
Thank you, Council, Member Kern. Oh, okay, Councilmember Yoshimoto, since it was yours.
I started this, huh? Okay. Okay, good points by everyone. Let me address each person, well, that I thought of good points. Ms. Yao brings up a really good point about the continuity, the learning curve. You know, we've seen it for the entire time we've been here. I think we all can speak to that as far as the learning curve. I think we've all had you know, good experiences with the people we served with as far as clerks. You know, some good, some not so good. I mean, just how life is. In terms of the 4 years, the reason why I stayed away from that, I actually thought about that, is that I want to get this away from the political process as far as possible. So I think 6 years is a good distance. So the chances of a council appointing the clerk, and then 2 years later they don't like the clerk because the clerk doesn't listen to them. Well, the clerk is not supposed to listen to the council, supposed to serve the council in the county. So if you put 6 years, there's a bright line. You're far away from it. So you're not likely to say, oh, I'm going to vote against you next time because you didn't listen to me. I'm keeping it really basic and simple, right? In terms of the qualifications, I thought about that too, but then I wanted to keep it simple because my expectation is the next council, if this is passed here and approved by the voters, the next council will do its utmost due diligence to make sure that all the things that Ms. Ford mentioned will happen, because they know that this commitment is 6 years. It's not 2 years where you can just be gone by a vote of the council, right? Right now, the council can change the clerk by simple resolution, by simple majority of 5 votes. I want to get away from that so there's no political tension involved, that there's stability in the office, that the staff is taken care of, the public's taken care of. So that's why it's 6 years and not 4. It's similar to like how we're talking about in the past as a comparison, legislative auditor. That's why I think the rationale, and I agreed with, is 6 years. When, you know, when it was put up for what I voted for that, because, you know, again, there's this time, there's this distance, there's this separation. I agree that if this is passed by the voters, there should probably be a different responsibility hierarchy in terms of the council and how the clerk would serve under the chair. It should be before the entire council. That makes complete sense to me if this should pass. But to me, that's getting one step ahead of ourselves until this passes from here. If this doesn't pass here, this will go to the voters, it doesn't happen. But this is just my thought process. If we want to do all in one ball of wax, we can. But in terms of qualifications, we can do that. But then again, that's the expectation and responsibility from the next council. We could probably, you know, get a long and drawn out list about minimum qualifications for this job, and that's fine, and that's the direction the council wants. I want to simplify it, council members. If not, you know, we can leave it the way it is. It changes every 2 years based upon the political majority. I'm perfectly fine with that too. Again, my intention is to leave this place a better place, and I think, you know, this is a step in the right direction. If the compromise position is 4 years, that's fine. I just seen too many things happen over these last 8 years, where I just want some stability. I wanted to change. I mean, we change every 2 years, and, you know, that's a good thing because we're very responsive to the voters, you know, for that reason. But I don't think the clerk should also serve in a similar capacity, because the clerk is appointed. The clerk not only serves the council, but the community at large. So those are my thoughts. I'm open to ideas and suggestions.
Councilmember Kern?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I like your logic, Mr. Ishmael. It seems to make sense to me. I like to keep it simple. Regarding the qualification thing, and that's where it gets a little bit trickier for me. Personally, I see like if you're going to be the director of Department of Public Works, for instance, have an engineering degree, something like this, I think it's more, is a person capable, is a person able to do it. I think if we narrow it down too far, like maybe have, had ran a few elections, it's gonna be really hard to do here. We'll probably be bringing somebody in from outside of our county. It'd be nice to be able to at least have qualified people here in our county, be able to keep it here in our county if that's possible. Also, for me, and I guess I'm biased on this because I'm self-educated. I didn't have an opportunity to go to college. It just wasn't in my cards at all. So I had to self-educate myself. I got involved. I was successful in business. I was able to see that there's a lot of people out there that didn't necessarily get that formal education just because it wasn't there to them. So I think to make that maybe qualification, I wouldn't do that because it would limit that. I think there's many people out there that are more than qualified to be able to be in a position like this. And I think bogging it down with too many qualifications wouldn't make it as good and open as possible and give as many people an opportunity. I think there's a lot of good qualified people out there. I like it. I would like this to not be political. We can leave it the way it is. That's fine. But I like that 6 years. I think it'd be tricky too to try to get it like a Wahoo because of that stagger. And it's just like Mr. Yoshimoto says, get it as far out as you can to make it so it's the least likely to be political. So that's my thought on it. I like the simplicity that it is, and I think that a council body can appoint somebody that's qualified. And I don't think I don't think having a bunch of minimum qualifications would be a good idea for this position myself, because what we need is somebody that can work with people and understand process and get along. And that doesn't necessarily come from certain qualifications. That comes from ability. So with that, maybe.
Councilmember Onishi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know,
You don't gotta move.
someone mentioned about, having, the clerk needs to, I guess, learn the system and to, I guess, gather that information for the position. I mean, as a council, as we appoint someone, I think they should kind of know the process already. And it's not like someone we're going to select and they're going to come in and now they got to learn that job. I think they should be able to at least come in and do, to me, like 3/4 of what they're supposed to do, and it's not like a learning process. I like what Ms. Ford said, was it Ms. Willie, about that the clerk doesn't answer just to the chair, but to the members. And to me, I agree upon that, because then, to me, that becomes not political. Okay, because in the past, when, being on the council, if you're in the minority group, you don't really get anything done, okay? And for the veterans, we've seen that, and we want to get away from that. So if the clerk is not answering to the chair, but answering to all members, then I think that's the best way to go. But like I said, we should, if we're looking at having this, where the clerks can come in and they're going to have to get this learning experience, then I think that's where the office manager will come in. Because then that way the clerk and the deputy clerk could help depend on one person who's overseeing all the operations. I don't want to see this council making like this amendment to the charter and just making it very simple. Because what's going to happen is it's going to put the burden upon the next council members to discuss about qualifications and guidelines. To me, if we're going to do this, we help them by setting up the guidelines already. Because in that way, it doesn't get political at the next term. So if we're going to go with this, we, the council right now, need to set it up already. And we cannot be letting, it's like how the CDP was, like certain ones, pass it now, amend it later. We don't want that, because then there's confusion, there becomes political, because then there's people gonna go shift this and that way, forget certain things in there, and so that, I wouldn't wanna put that burden upon the next council. So if we're gonna do changes to this bill, then we do it now. Okay, and then we move forward, and then that way, when the next council comes in, they'll have a guideline to say, okay, this is what we gotta do. Okay, thank you. And, Madam Chair, I have my meeting that I have to go.
Okay, so you'll be back,
1:30.
okay. And we need, we'll let you know, or if somebody can, yeah, I'm wondering if we should just go into recess and do a lunch already, but. Okay. Margaret wants, can we, you wanna just recess? Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll just, okay. I'm just gonna let her speak, because she's waiting. I'm gonna ask Councilmember Willie to be on point.
Okay, first I just want to say that Jay did an excellent job finding Stuart. And if I knew he was going to be the next 6 years, then I would have no problem with this. And I think that one of the things, and I was trying to think of what qualifications, I'm not even sure what Stuart's qualifications were. But I feel that I want to agree with what Councilmember Kern said, just in terms of going through specific qualifications. Largely, I think that role is a personality and what you bring as a human being and able to herd cats and even be able to herd all of us together. And those type of human that you don't necessarily learn in school. Whereas I think the thing in terms of process, you can learn about the elections process. That's just a matter of how much time it takes you to learn them. So, but I right now, the more we talk, I feel unless we expand this along the lines that Councilmember Onishi said, and actually put some of those guidelines, like what the chains of authority is, how we bring it about, whether perhaps people apply, then right now I'm not going to support this. I feel that the way it is right now, with the 2 years, allows those who are not the chair a little bit more say-so and comfort zone in that the clerk doesn't just answer to the chair, where it's like, well, yes, this is my interpretation of the rules, but, you know, the chair says this is what it is, and that's the boss. You know, I feel that the accountability, if we were only doing this one step right now, I'm uncomfortable. If we do more and expand it and do some of the things that Councilmember Onishi, myself, and Ford, then I'm open to it. And again, stressing what Councilmember Kern said, is that I don't think we want to sort of limit in terms of formal qualifications.
I'm gonna, is it okay if we come back at, figure it, 1:30-ish? And the reason why I'm saying that is Councilmember Onishi had to leave for some business, and he has to have lunch as well, too, after that. Yeah, okay. So 1:30 then, okay, recess to 1:30.